Hi, everyone. Now we're going to be looking at the astrology of March 2021. So here are a couple of general considerations, just a general overview of the energy of March. So the sun is in the sign of Pisces and Aries in the month of March. This happens, of course, every year. This is the ending of an old cycle, Pisces, and the beginning of a new cycle, Aries. While in Pisces, the time for wrapping up the old zodiacal year is called for, resolving, forgiving, and letting go, and making room for the new to be born in Aries. There is a new moon in the sign of Pisces and a full moon in the sign of Libra this month. Mercury starts the month in the sign of Aquarius and moves into Pisces mid-month. Mercury comes out of its retrograde shadow on March 13th. So we're really not completely out of that Mercury retrograde in Aquarius energy that we spent so many weeks in the month of February. By March 13th, however, things are really starting to move forward. And then shortly after the 13th, Mercury moves into the sign of Pisces, Venus starts the month in the sign of her exaltation, Pisces. Venus in Pisces is love brought to its highest level, the level of compassion, the level of unconditional love. Venus can be quite jealous and petty at times, but with Pisces, it really sort of brings the best out in Pisces. The best out of Venus in Pisces. We can, however, get caught up in the ideal with Venus in Pisces. So we can be extraordinarily idealistic. And when you're that idealistic, it's very easy to get disappointed. So be aware of that as well. It shifts into Aries, the sign of its detriment, on the 21st. That's the day after the sun moves into Aries. And she is also starting a new synodic cycle with Neptune. And she makes a conjunction to the sun this month, and she makes a conjunction to Chiron this month. So there's a lot of new starts with that Venus and Aries energy. Mars starts the month in Taurus and quickly shifts into Gemini on the 3rd. That's tomorrow. Today is the 2nd. And of course, Gemini is an air sign. And I feel as though these winds that are blowing like crazy around here is bringing in that Gemini energy. Mars has been in Taurus for a while. It moved into Taurus on the 6th of January. For those of you who don't know what the 6th of January is, which is probably no one, everybody knows what happened on that day. It was the day of the insurrection and the attack on the Capitol. Mars moved into Taurus right in the middle of that. When it started, Mars was in Aries. It had just come out of its shadow. It was very, very powerful, very angry, very frustrated, and wanted to attack something. And it did. And by the time they left, Mars was in Taurus. And Mars in Taurus can be very, very base. There's a lot of base energy. It can be very fixed. It can be very angry. But it takes a while for that anger to... It's like the bull in the china shop. And certainly we have had that experience. Now it moves into the sign of Gemini. And Mars in Gemini is an energy of wanting to, or always maybe having to have two things to do, or having to do things over again. You try once and then you have to try again in order for it to work out. It can be an energy that is a little schizophrenic because it's duality. Gemini is a sign of duality. So it's as if Mars is always going in two directions. What's interesting about that is the United States has its Mars in Gemini. And according to I've been listening to more traditional astrologers, when a planet goes into a sign, it starts to activate that sign. So wherever you have Gemini in your chart, those things are getting activated at this time through the energy of Mars, All right. So Mars starts the month in Taurus and quickly shifts into Gemini, where we remain until April 23rd, approximately 8 weeks. Mars generally, when it's at its normal pace, so to speak, although it shifts and changes, but we usually spend about 6 weeks in a sign, so it's a little bit longer than 6 weeks. But we have to remember that Mars just came out of a retrograde period, so it's moving, but it's still moving a little slower than it would when it spends 6 weeks in a sign. The interesting thing about Mars in March is it only has one aspect, and that is a trine to Saturn on the 21st. 21st, big day. And Mars trine Saturn brings a lot of energy to new structures. And I say new structures because Saturn is now in Aquarius. It has left the sign of its rulership in Capricorn and moved into its sign of rulership in Aquarius. And so this is about creating the structures that will support the more Aquarian humanitarian ideals. And so we can start to see things moving in that direction this month as well. Jupiter is in the sign of Aquarius this month. Of course, Jupiter moved into Aquarius at the end of last year. Jupiter spends about a year in a sign. It does actually move out of Aquarius this year into Pisces temporarily, and then moves back into Aquarius to finish its turn in Aquarius. Jupiter is the expansive principle. Aquarius is humanitarian endeavor. Aquarius can also be rebellion, and Aquarius can also be groupthink, group consciousness, all that sort of cancel culture that they keep talking about. If you don't agree with the group, then you're out. I mean, there's a lot of power in that, but sometimes we have to learn, or maybe it's always this way, how not to use the energy before we get a handle on the energy. So that's something we need to take into consideration. Jupiter actually only makes one major aspect this month, and that is a conjunction to Mercury. What's interesting about the conjunction to Mercury is a couple of things. First of all, Mercury rules the left brain and Jupiter rules the right brain. So when they make a conjunction, it's like your right and your left brain are on the same page. Jupiter is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini. The nodes of the moon, the north node is in Gemini and the south node is in Sagittarius. So these conjunctions are connected to the nodes, which is our conscious collective evolution. And so these become very important. And when we get to that point in the month, we'll look at all three conjunctions, because this is the last of three. We had one in January, one in February, and now we have one in March. And then it continues its synodic cycle. Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius this month and does make that trine to Mars. Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, of course. It's there from 2017 to 2024. It makes two major aspects this month, both waning sextiles. That's the energy of Aquarius, first to Venus and then to Mercury later in the month. And so the waning sextiles, of Uranus to Venus, what we value, what's important, and to Mercury, how we think. Venus is also our money, and these waning sextiles are opportunities to more fairly distribute money. So this is good omen for the COVID relief plan. This is good omen for the infrastructure plans, right? So now that we know what we know, how are we going to realign things so that we can start building a better society, a better society. Uranus is in the sign of, oh, I said that, right? Yes, okay, I did that. All right, so that's Uranus. Neptune, of course, is in Pisces from 2011 to 2026. It starts 3 synodic cycles this month because we're in the time when the personal planets move through Pisces. And if Neptune is in Pisces for 14 years, this is generally the time that Neptune starts its synodic cycles with the personal planets. And Neptune synodic cycles are about dissolving the boundaries, opening up to spirit, opening up to the consciousness of all things, not just the consciousness of people, but planetary consciousness, mineral consciousness, animal consciousness, the consciousness of nature, all sort of opens up at this time. And so we're very sensitive. We're very, very sensitive. It's a very dreamy time. It's a time when imagination is very, very powerful. So imagine well, imagine well. And of course, it can be a time of confusion. So the 3 synodic cycles is the sun, Neptune on the 10th, Venus, Neptune on the 13th, and then lastly, Mercury, Neptune on the 29th. Bringing the energy of the divine into our daily lives. Pluto, of course, is in the sign of Capricorn. It's there from 2008 to 2024. We're almost out of it, but it makes no major aspects to any planet other than the moon in March. And so the Plutonic energies specifically, I mean, in your chart, they may be doing something, but as the planets move through the heavens now, it is the moon that takes on all of the sort of Pluto energy. So opportunities to transform the way you react and respond to life. And Chiron, which is in the sign of Aries from 2018 to 2027, that's 9 years, makes its annual conjunction to Venus on the 28th and the Sun on the 29th. This is starting 2 year-long synodic cycles between Venus, the feminine, the planet of love, with Chiron, the wounded healer, and then the Sun, which brings illumination, along with Chiron, the wounded healer. So the sun brings an illumination of the wound, but the sun also brings an illumination of that which can heal the wound, because Chiron always has within it the wound and the solution to the wound, the remedy. The remedy is also found in Chiron. All right, so we're going to look at this month week by week. This is week 1. Week 1 we'll say goes from the 1st to the 6th. And what's interesting about March is that there's a lot of personal stuff happening. The moon, of course, is always very active, but most of the aspects are moon aspects in March. We don't have a lot of outer planet, except for those synodic cycles that begin with Neptune, right? Pluto is not doing much. Uranus, I think, is somewhat active, but not crazy active as it was in February when we had Uranus square Saturn. Now, that Uranus square Saturn is an energy that is going on all year. So that's always going to be sort of the base note. It's going to be in the background this year. Questioning authority and restructuring society, and revolution and rebellion. Okay. So the first thing we're going to look at is actually occurring. I have Wednesday the 6th, but it's not Wednesday the 6th. It's actually 3/3. My mistake. We have Mars ingress into Gemini. We also have on that day Venus making a sextile to Uranus and the sun trining the moon. And what we have here, I believe, is the ingress of Mars. So let's take a look here. We have Mars over here. This is for Washington, D.C. So Mars is actually moving into Gemini in the 7th house. The United States, if you use the Sibley chart, has Mars in the 7th house in Gemini. So it's sort of a bringing that up. Of course, the 7th house is our partners and our open enemies. So we can expect a lot of conversation, Mars in Gemini, a lot of action, perhaps a lot of diplomacy. Mars in the 7th house can bring a lot of diplomacy. And so there's going to be a lot of back and forth. There's going to be a lot of communication that occurs. And Joe Biden has his Uranus in Gemini. And so Mars is going to be actually activating his Mars shortly after it moves into Gemini. So we're going to see him both expressing himself and breaking some rules. Uranus, he just yesterday or the day before spoke of the need for unions. Like, he spoke out. It was like unheard of. He just stood there and said, we need these unions. So he's stating things that we know are true, but haven't been said in a long time, or haven't been given the power of the voice of the president. And whether you like Joe Biden or not, and this was true of Trump as well, whether you like him or not, his words have power, because he is, for all intents and purposes, the most powerful person on the planet, whether you like it or not. We also have Venus making a sextile. Now, Venus, I believe, where is it? Here's Venus, and where's Uranus? Here's Uranus, right? So this happened, Venus sextile Uranus actually happens before Mars ingresses into Gemini. But as it stands, this sextile is occurring at 8 degrees of Taurus and 8 degrees of Pisces. No, yes, of Pisces. So this is, and what's happening, if you look over here, is Venus over here is actually getting closer and closer to Uranus. So this sextile, this 60-degree aspect, actually is a product of Venus going from its initial conjunction with Uranus all the way around until it gets to the point of the sextile. And of course, the sextile is mentally stimulating. It's an opportunity for us to move in a more progressive direction. I believe the Sabian symbol for the conjunction of Uranus and Venus was a woman standing at an open grave. So there's this sense of death. There's a sense of that everything has its moment, and then its moment fades. It's like the idea of the temporal with this. And so that conjunction, I believe, occurred either in March or April of last year. And so I feel it's connected to the whole COVID experience, right, that we've been having, that's requiring us to change our values through shock and awe. Like, we've been shocked. So our values have been tested, our values have been changed through our experience with the pandemic. That's true. Our money systems have had to change and shift. They are doing things. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I know that they're changing things in such a way, and they're trying to revamp the whole system, and that's necessary, because we can't continue to just be in debt in the way that we are. So that's going to change. But we can see that this is a process as Uranus moves through Taurus, a Venus rules sign. Taurus rules money. Venus rules money. Every time Venus and Uranus come together every year, it's going to do another cycle of this. And so gradually over the 7 years, by the end of the time that Uranus is in Taurus, we should have a better idea of what exactly the shift in values and money is going to mean. So we're in the process. So we're not going to know things yet, but we just have to understand that there's going to be instability in the money. It's just the nature of the time, Uranus in Taurus, and it's a necessary instability. And it's also, to a certain extent, a redistribution of wealth that has to happen. And of course, we know that here in the United States, the Democrats are working pretty hard to do that. Whether they completely have the political will is another story, but that is the direction that they are looking to go in. And it's a necessary direction. Okay, we also have the sun trine the moon. Here's the sun. And we have the moon in Scorpio, the sun in Pisces. This is a waning trine. It has the energy of Sagittarius. This is social rewards. So this is a time of reward. Now, this is part of the synodic, the lunation cycle, that began with the new moon in Aquarius. So this is part of that very, very powerful new moon with 6 of the 7 classical planets in Aquarius. So, all right, on the 7th, we have Jupiter making its conjunction to Mercury. This is the only aspect that's happening to Jupiter this month. And it is the 3rd of 3, and it's occurring at 18 degrees of Aquarius. And we can see that, let's see, where are we here? Jupiter, here we go. We have Jupiter and Mercury. And what's interesting, this is for Washington, D.C., and this is occurring in the 4th house, So I feel like this is help for families. Okay, we finally get it done. We've been doing it. Now there have been 3 conjunctions. And so it's like, if at first you don't succeed, try again. The first conjunction actually occurred on the 11th of January, 2021 at 6 degrees of Aquarius. Now, Biden was not in office yet at this time. Trump was still president. So we have this energy of wanting to help, but it was not yet time. So we have here, and it occurred at 6 degrees of Aquarius, a Sabian symbol. A masked figure performs ritualistic acts in a mystery play. You might remember this because we talked about this when it happened. The keynote here is the individual's involvement in long-established patterns of activity, aiming at the release of collective power. Collective power, we have power as the collective. The question is, what do we want to do with that power? What do we want to do with that power? And the key word here is transpersonal responsibility. Transpersonal responsibility. The second conjunction, Mercury-Jupiter conjunction, occurred on February 14th of 2021. This is when Mercury was retrograde. That's why we have 3 of these conjunctions, because Mercury went retrograde. 14 degrees of Aquarius this occurred at. And at this point, we did have, Joe Biden was in office, but of course, Mercury is retrograde. So things weren't quite moving forward. 14 degrees of Aquarius, a train entering a tunnel. The keynote here is the ability to shortcut the process of natural evolution by the exercise of will, mental skill, and physical self-discipline. This is telling us that we need to focus on that which we want to bring into our lives. Focus on what we want to bring into our lives. The key word here is penetration. Utilizing your powerful focus to create your reality. Mercury Jupiter conjunction on the 4th of March, which is the last one, which is the one we're talking about now, occurs at 18 degrees of Aquarius. The Sabian symbol for 18 degrees of Aquarius, interestingly enough, is a man's secret motives are being publicly unmasked. Oh, that's interesting. The difficulty for the modern individual to keep secret his private past or his deep motives. The key word here is an unmasking. And so there are, and we can see this happening. We can see in the case of the X-45th, where his taxes are being looked at now. A lot of what was going on during his time in office is starting to be revealed, and not just him. We can see it's not just the Republicans that this is happening to. We can also see this in somebody like an Andrew Cuomo, who's having his past opened up like a book for people to look at and evaluate whether he is the type of leader that we want. Right. So it's all of this unmasking that's happening. And it's not just people in power, but it's all of us. We cannot hide. We cannot hide what we've done. We cannot hide who we are. There's this whole thing about privacy. There really isn't any privacy on a certain level. And so being authentically who you are from your heart becomes your shield. You're like, this is who I am. I have nothing to hide. Have I done things in the past that I'm ashamed of? Maybe. Have I done things in the past that if I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have done? Most likely, right? So we grow in awareness. We grow in awareness. It is not about judgment. It's not saying, well, you did this and you did that, so you don't, I mean, you're being held responsible. And yes, you could, people have to change their situation because of those things, but it does not make the person a worse person. It just makes them a more illuminated person as to what they need to do and what they don't need to do. All right, now we're in week 2. Week 2 will be March 7th to March 13th. Okay, hi guys, I'm back. I had to do a whole bunch of stuff between the last time I spoke to you. So let's pull up the screen and take a look at week 2. All right, from here, oops, current slide. Okay, so here we are at week 2. Week 2 runs from March 7th to March 13th. And we're looking at March 10th. Do ignore March 107th over here. And what we're looking at here is a conjunction between the Sun and Neptune, occurring at 21 degrees of Pisces. Incidentally, the degree of my moon. Very emotional for me. Anywho, so the Sun conjunct Neptune is the start of a year-long synodic cycle. Now, the interesting thing about the relationship between the Sun and Neptune is that the Sun is an integrative principle, but it's also a principle of becoming separate from cosmic consciousness, right? So we have the circle of the Sun. We have the circle, which is spirit, and then we have the dot in the center, and we can see that right here, the Sun with the dot in the center, which is our awareness, our point of awareness within this scope of spirit. And so there is a defining, there's a point of awareness. There's a defining point to the Sun, and that's what the Sun does. The Sun illuminates a specific thing. Neptune, on the other hand, is the dissolution of all boundaries. And so we're talking about a planet that's associated with identity, and then a planet that's associated with the dissolving everything that sort of creates that identity. And so when these two planets come together every year in a synodic cycle, there's a spiritualizing force that's occurring, Neptune. There's also an illumination, the sun, about some spiritual truth, perhaps, some spiritual connection, forgiveness, compassion, whatever it happens to be, what that Neptune is in your chart. And where 21 degrees of Pisces falls in your chart, that's where you will have this new cycle begin. And so we can see here, this is a chart for the United States of America. This is actually happening in the sixth house. That the sixth house is the house of health. It's also the house of the military. And so there's perhaps a new clandestine thing occurring with that. But on a personal level, okay, on a personal level, this is an opportunity for us to be illuminated to some sort of spiritual truth. Now let's look at the Sabian symbol for this. The Sabian symbol for 21 degrees of Pisces says, under the watchful eye of a Chinese servant, a girl fondles a little white lamb. Growth in consciousness in its earliest tactile awareness of the wonders of unsophisticated living. Now that doesn't seem to make much sense, I think, but I'm going to continue reading this because this is a very, very, very deep and interesting symbol. According to the occult tradition, the original Chinese race was an extension of the humanity or root race preceding ours. Thus, the stress upon the biological factors of family and ancestors, and on the dualism of yang and yin, the yang and yin interplay. The Chinese servant represents the past as a servant of the new evolution. The white lamb suggests the sign of all beginnings, Aries. This new evolution is just about to begin during the late Pisces phase of the year cycle. It is as yet an ideal, a white loveliness. The girl discovers the new feelings of the touch of wool and of the animal warmth. Keyword, the Chinese kindly watching the white girl, the girl fondling the white lamb. There is charm and ingenuousness in the scene, a vision of white hope, a hope for a future that can be felt almost naively. So this is about a further opening of our understanding of our interconnectedness with that which has come before us and that which is ahead of us. That's how I would see this. And there are other themes to it, but we could spend a lot of time on that, which I'm not going to do for you. Something you can evaluate yourself. On the 13th of March, we have a new moon in Pisces. This occurs at 24 degrees of Pisces. Here we have the sun and the moon here, 2303. We round it off to the next degree, 24 of Pisces. It is conjunct Neptune. It's also conjunct Venus. This is a stellium in Pisces, and Pisces is the sign associated with compassion. It is the sign associated with oneness and unity. And so this is an opportunity for us to do some connecting with spirit. It's a great time to meditate. If you have the opportunity to be by a body of water, this is a beautiful way to spend this new moon. If you don't have a body of water, if you can't get out, or if you're not allowed to get out in certain cases, then perhaps you could take a nice sea salt bath or put some Epsom salt, put some, do some sort of, is the word ablution? Do some sort of cleansing. This is a time to cleanse. If you don't have availability to that, listen to a video or that has the ocean sounds, or watch, the amazing blue planet ocean. You want to connect with that sense of cosmic consciousness, in whatever means possible. You can do it through music. You can do it through a bath. Make this be a opportunity, because new moons are always about planting seeds. And so wherever this happens to fall in your chart, this is where a new seed is being planted. We also have, on this day of this new moon, Venus making a conjunction to Neptune at 21 degrees of Pisces. So the symbol of that little lamb that we talked about, we have Venus Neptune conjunction. Venus and Neptune have a special relationship because Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. Venus is love, Neptune is compassion. And so this is a time of new beginnings for that. Interestingly enough, this day vibrates, at least here in the US, the day that this happens, vibrates to a 21/3 vibration. That is the world card in the tarot. And so it's about beginnings, endings, and beginnings, So there's something new being born. There's something new being brought out onto the planet. And it has to do with Pisces. Of course, Pisces is about healing. Pisces is about forgiveness. Pisces is about unconditional love. These are the things that are being given birth now. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the Sabian symbol for 24 degrees of Pisces, where the new moon is occurring. It says, on a small island surrounded by a vast expanse of sea, people are seen living in close interaction. The need to consciously accept one's own personal limitations in order to concentrate one's energy and to live a centered and fulfilled life. So this is talking about, if there's something that is bothering you that you have no control over, they want you to let it go. Let it go, let it go. I won't do it anymore because I'll drive you crazy right for the rest of the day. And then focus on what it is that you can affect. This is kind of the Hanged Man energy, right? Looking at life from a different perspective, figuring out what you can affect and doing it, and what you can't affect and surrendering to it. Of course, the Hanged Man is a Neptune card. So that's part of the lesson of that energy. And so that's what we're being asked to do at this time. Every individualized person is a small island in a vast ocean of mankind. The ego fulfills a necessary function as it sets boundaries and gives a specific character to the consciousness. So we all need an ego in order to actually be here on planet Earth. Within these boundaries, a complex interplay, linking and integrating the various aspects of the person, can operate constructively. In time, these ego boundaries can not only expand, but can become a zone of intense interchange between the inner and the outer, between the individual and the community, between man and the universe. And so focusing on that which you can affect and doing that and affecting it changes not only you, but the environment that you're in. And so all change comes from up, down, inside, out. That is a change that comes from the outside. We will resist, but change that comes down and through and out is the alignment. It's when we are aligned with spirit. And when we are aligned with spirit, we become conduits of spirit. The fourth stage symbol tells us that the first duty of any man or woman is to be truly what he or she is as an individual. But this individual has a particular dharma, a place and a function in the vaster whole. The island inhabitants gets I think that's supposed to be sustenance from the sea, and in time learn to navigate the sea and interact with other islanders. And eventually it will come to realize their oneness within the whole of the earth, which includes everything. An appropriate keyword would be centralization. Above, down, inside, out. A bird just flew by my head over there, just checking out. And here we have the Sabian symbol for the 21 degrees of Pisces. Under a watchful and kind eye, the Chinese servant, the girl fondles the white lamb, which we talked about. All right, now we're going to move into week 3. You see, we're kind of jumping these weeks pretty quickly because there aren't a lot of things, big things happening. There are a lot of little things happening. And as we go through the weeks, I will talk about those as well. Monday, March 15th, we have Mercury moving into Pisces. Mercury moves into Pisces. Actually, 2 days previous, on the 13th, Mercury actually moved out of the shadow of its retrograde. So the 13th or the 14th, it's still in Aquarius, and it's very powerful in Aquarius because it's just left its shadow. All of that Aquarius energy, all that pondering that we did when Mercury was retrograde in Aquarius sort of comes up and like, whoo, and then it moves into Pisces. Then Mercury moves into Pisces. On the 16th, we have the sun make a sextile to Pluto. The sun, of course, is in Pisces. Pluto is in Capricorn. This is a waxing sextile. It has the energy of Gemini, where we have an opening the lines of communication, conversation about power, self-responsibility, deep thinking, and uncovering hidden information. So we can expect some things that we did not know to know at this point. On Thursday, the 18th, we have Venus sextile Pluto. The sun and Venus are moving together in the sky. So one thing happens to the sun and then it's going to happen to Venus, right? That's how it's working right now. And this sextile to Pluto is also, of course, a waxing sextile with the flavor of Gemini, opening the lines of communication in relationship to Venus around issues of power, control, and in some cases, clandestine relationships, because Pluto has that clandestine energy. This can also be an exposure of information about money that was originally something we didn't know about it, whether it's your money, somebody else's money, or what they're doing and how they're trying to change the whole system of money as we have been shifted and changed through this pandemic throughout the whole world. I mean, it's not just here in America, right? All right. And then Saturday, March 20th, the sun ingresses into Aries. This is the equinox. This is when the night and the day are equal. There are 2 points in the year, the equinoxes, when things are equal. You can actually take an egg, put it in your hand, and balance it on its end, a raw egg. You'll actually feel the gravitational pull through your hand if you do that, but you have to do it at the moment of the equinox because it's just a passing thing. And it's something I would suggest everybody do, because to feel the pull of the earth through your hand is, it's kind of a religious experience. I've only ever gotten to do it once because I was awake at the time. And I guess I should let you know when that is. When exactly is that? The exact time. Oh, I think it's going to be right here on the next, I guess, well, it's not quite yet. All right, well, let's see. I'll tell you. 5:37 a.m. on the East Coast of the U.S. That's when you can hold the egg and you'll feel it. So I don't know if I'll be up, but maybe I'll try. I'll do some sort of alarm with that. Okay. The sun moves into Aries every year. It's the beginning of the new zodiacal year. And it is a world point. It's the beginning. It activates all of the cardinal signs, the 0 degrees of the cardinal signs. If you remember, we had an eclipse last summer at 0 degrees of Cancer, when the sun was at 0 degrees of Capricorn in the winter solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere, summer solstice in the Southern Hemisphere. This was back in December. On that day, we had the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. So these points, the cardinal points, have been very, very active. And of course, this one is active as well. And of course, it's Aries, so it's the beginning. And 1 degree of Aries is always the same symbol. So what I like to do is I like to look at that symbol because it says something about 1 degree of Aries. And then I like to see where Mars is at. Mars is at, because it gives us an idea and a flavor. Mars is the ruling planet of Aries. And so wherever Mars happens to be sort of influences that. So this is why we're looking at both the position of Mars and the position of the sun. So 1 degree of Aries, a woman just risen from the sea. The seal is embracing her. Emergence of new forms and the potentiality of consciousness. The key word here is the impulse to be. To be. I am. That's Aries. Mars, the ruling planet of Aries, is at 10 degrees of Gemini. This colors the energy while the sun transits Aries. Sabian symbol for 10 degrees of Gemini is an airplane performing a nosedive. The superior ability to challenge nature and play with danger. Through the controlled use of mental powers, man is able to challenge the most basic force of nature, gravitation. He enjoys playing with it as a lion tamer with his violent animals. But what he challenges is within himself as well as without. Gravitation is the universal binding force of the material world. By challenging it, man prepares himself to pierce beyond the physical and reach higher realms of existence. He may lose the struggle, but that prospect makes the effort more exciting. He may gain immortality. Of course, if he gains immortality, he has to die. Okay. This final stage of the sequence, the symbol for it has a strong sense of finality. No possibility of half measures exists. Man is committed irrevocably to success or failure. At least as a conscious and self-reliant mind, the alternatives are clear-cut. One may describe it as mind versus matter, or as man's will against the fate of that gravitation so aptly symbolizes. So there's an all or nothing energy about this energy of the sun moving into Aries. And so we will feel this almost life and death and the daring do that is necessary at this time. Now, I'm not saying you should do nosedives. I'm not saying you should jump off of buildings. I'm not saying any of that. But this is really sort of pushing the envelope a little. The energy is that of pushing the envelope. And here we have the sun ingressing into Aries, and we can see this right here. This is for the US, and we can see this is happening in the second house of our resources. So in the United States, we have to completely commit to a new way of dealing with our resources. Simple. Okay. And we have Mars here close to and getting close to its conjunction to the North Node in the 4th house. This is about communication and energy. The 4th house is the soul of the nature of the nation, building back better, I guess. But this is like starting at ground zero. We're restarting at ground zero with this energy. So it's an exciting time. It's almost as if we have nothing to lose, in a way. Week 4, March 21st to March 27th. We start with Sunday, March 21st, pretty busy day. We have Venus is ingressing into Aries. So I said the sun and Venus are moving together. The sun goes in, Venus goes in. We have a waning sextile between Mercury and Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus, Mercury is in Pisces. Waning sextiles have the energy of Aquarius. It has the energy of moving in a more progressive direction, a more humanitarian direction. At the same time, we have the only aspect that's occurring with Saturn this month, and that's a trine to Mars. It's a waxing, creative, self-expressive trine. This really, truly is new beginnings, new beginnings, new beginnings. Mars trine Saturn, energy to create structures that will help support these new beginnings. We are in a whole new, the old does not apply anymore. And so we need to be as progressive and directive. And this is life and death, seriously. There is a life and death aspect to this, but it's not you putting your life in danger. It's that if we want to survive this, we are going to have to start working together. We're going to have to start working from the bottom up. We're going to have to start communicating with each other. We're going to have to start having conversations on how best to proceed. That's what's necessary. We can't just cut people off because they don't think the way we do or they don't believe what we believe. Now, there are certain people who you can't talk to because they're in their own little worlds. Leave them. Don't waste your energy trying to convince the unconvincible. What are you going to do? I am Aries. What am I going to do? How am I going to take responsibility? What actions am I going to take? Who am I going to talk to? What am I going to create? Remember, it starts from within and then moves out, right? That was part of the other symbols that we got in Pisces. This particular Mars-Saturn trine is the creative self-expression point, 120 degrees from its initial starting point, which was the conjunction. That occurred on March 31st of 2020. At 1 degree of Aquarius, the same degree as Saturn and Jupiter did on the equinox, on the solstice. So these times are all connected. It's all connected, and it's on these cardinal points. It is time to do it differently, folks. This is just. I feel like the need to open up here, just open up and be and create and experience and go for it. The 1 degree of Aquarius and old Adobe mission in California, the power inherent in all great human works to endure far beyond the worker's lifespan. So what we are doing now is for the future. As difficult as it is, if anybody has an opportunity to watch Lee Harris's March energy, he talks about this. He talks about that it's hard, but it's okay. We're here to do this now, so let's just do it. Doesn't matter how hard it is, just got to do it. And here we have Venus moving into Aries here. You see that? Venus in Aries. And the ruler of Aries is Mars at 11 degrees of Gemini. So it's actually moved, right? It wasn't at 10 degrees of Gemini previously, the last one, or was it 11? I'm sorry, I don't want to confuse myself. I don't want to confuse you. It's at 11 degrees of Gemini. So here we have the same 1 degree of Aries, a woman risen from the sea, right? But the Mars now, and this is Venus, right? It's not the sun. Before it was the sun we looked at. This is Venus. This is how Venus ingresses into Aries, Mars being at 11 degrees of Gemini. Newly opened lands offer the pioneer new opportunities for experience. This is, again, describing a new way, a pioneering way to move forward. Bust in the case of here in America, get rid of the filibuster, or just do it differently. It's time for bold action. It's time for bold action. Newly opened lands offer the pioneer new opportunities for experience, the power and joy of new beginnings. And the fact that it is with Venus, and Venus being the divine feminine, says a lot about this symbol as well. These newly opened lands can refer to any inexperienced field of potential activity at any level, material, emotion, mental, or supramental. We are now dealing with the third level of experience, at which individuality, at least the ego character, operates more definitely. While the preceding phases, much was said concerning the powers of the mind. This mind was essentially based on the collective patterns of a culture and a society. Now, at this level, we find human beings essentially engaged in personal and particular struggle for a full and effective individuation. And the initial realization that they need to experience has reached the potential of a virgin field of consciousness and activity. They are faced with the unfamiliar and anything could happen. Rising to the occasion. Rising to the occasion. So do it. Just do it, folks. Wednesday, March 23rd, we have Mercury making a last quarter square to Mars. This is a crisis in belief square. Mercury is the mind. Mars is our activity. This was actually part of a synodic cycle that began in 2019. So 2 years ago, when Mercury and Mars conjoined 3 times. They conjoined 3 times. It was because Mercury was retrograde at that time. It happens in June, July, and September of 2019. First at 22 of Cancer, then at 5 of Leo, and then 11 of Virgo. So it went by the signs, right? It started in Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Fourth house, 5th house, 6th house, right? They rule those houses. 22 degrees of Cancer, a young woman awaiting a sailboat. The longing for transcendent happiness in the soul, opened to great dreams. So this is dreaming the big dream. 5 degrees of Leo, rock formations tower over a deep canyon. The structuring power of elemental forces during long cycles of planetary evolution. So for the first one, we have the personal dreams, right, of somebody connecting to that oceanic consciousness. The second one, we have the power of the earth and the history and the long history of the earth. And the third one is in her baby, a mother sees deep longing for a son answered. So this is a deep longing for something to happen, actually happening, right? An actual manifestation. And in the tree of life, the sun, the place of the sun, S-O-N, is the same as the place of the sun, S-U-N, which is Tippereth, which is the place of beauty, which is located in the heart. So this is an expression of your heart's desire. The spirit's answer to vital needs of whatever became individualized out of its infinite ocean of potentialities. This is getting what you want. Now we come to the point here where we are in a crisis in belief. And so this is a point of individuation. This is a point of becoming an authority in your own life, and then taking what you know and bringing it to the community so that it can raise all boats. Friday, March 26th, the sun makes a conjunction to Venus at 6 degrees of Aries. Okay, the sun and Venus come together. 6 degrees of Aries, a square with one of its sides brightly illumined. The emotional desire for concrete, stabilizing existence as a person. A one-sided urge for inner stability. So we are asking ourselves to be more stable. It's interesting because the sun and Venus at 6 degrees of Aries is a different energy than the sun and when the sun went into Aries. Again, there's this energy of the rising of the feminine. And here we have the sun conjunct right here. And it's actually, this is for Washington. It's happening in the 3rd house. And the 3rd house is the house of the mind. The house of the mind. So it's about focusing of the mind, right? Focusing of the mind. Now, week 5, which is the last couple of days of March, this is when a lot of stuff is happening with Chiron. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the full moon that occurs on the 28th. It's at 9 degrees of Libra. This full moon with the moon in Libra and the sun in Aries is along the axis of identity. The I am and you are. Who am I and who are we? How do we interact, right? So the Sabian symbol for 9 of Libra, 3 old masters hanging on the wall of a special room in an art gallery. The need to return to source during a confused search for new values in a chaotic society. Now, this is, we're talking about the moon, which is reflective. We're talking about Libra, which is about partnership. And we're talking about old masters. We do not want to throw out the baby with the bathwater here. There are things from the past that are still viable and we can still build upon. And so we want to remember, we want to connect with that. At the same time, with the sun at 9 degrees of Aries, a crystal gazer, the development of inner realization of organic wholeness. And so it's about taking the structures from the past that still are viable, and then in a comparison or in a balance to this inner realization that we are part of a greater whole. We are not separate. And yet there are rules of manifestation that we still have to go by, because we are living, our consciousness is not just in this third dimensional reality, but our physical body is, and the structures around us are. Our consciousness can go to higher dimensions, but we have to stay connected. And you'll know if you're not connected because you'll feel it in your body. Eventually your body also, it stays, but it becomes finer. It becomes more sensitive, more delicate, more higher vibrational. And, but that is a process, and that takes the time. And here we have the full moon, and we can see that this full moon is in the 9th house, and well, it's in the 3rd house, but the sun is in the 9th house. So we're dealing with the axis of identity, which is Aries, Libra, but it's happening in the houses, at least in the United States, in the house of the lower mind and the higher mind. So it's about getting our heads straight. On the same day, we also have Venus conjunct Chiron at 9 degrees of Aries. And the sun conjunct Chiron at 9 degrees of Aries the next day, Monday the 29th. So we can see here the sun conjunct Aries. We can see that Venus was just conjunct Aries. It's moved past it. But let's see what 9 degrees of Aries is. Oh, it's the crystal gazer. So we have this 9 degrees of Aries again. I'm going to read the whole thing to you now, because it's not just about the realization of wholeness. The crystal sphere symbolizes wholeness. Within the sphere, images take form. These images may reveal future events, but more significantly, they picture the situation as a whole, the situation which the clairvoyant is meant to interpret. The nascent mental faculties operate through still dominant emotions or collective and cultural incentives, act as a centralizing and whole-making power. Whatever the intelligence perceived in its concentration is the function of every inner impulse and outer event in the open field of the personality, still unclouded by egotism. At this 4th stage of a 5-fold sequence, a new technique required for the development of individualized consciousness is revealed: concentrated attention. Concentrated attention. Venus is the feminine. Chiron is the wounded healer. Chiron in Aries is the wound of identity. It's the wound of bullying. It's the wound of narcissism. It's the wound of being too aggressive. It's the wound of not being aggressive and not. It's the wound of thinking too much of yourself or not thinking anything of yourself. And so with Venus there, it's asking us to focus on love of self and then others in a balanced way. And what you concentrate on becomes your reality. It's the focusing point of what you're going to manifest. So we have to be very careful about where we put our concentration. On the 29th, also, we have Mercury conjunct Neptune. And this is the start of a synodic cycle. Again, synodic cycle, Neptune and Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication. So Spirit has something to say to us at 22 degrees of Pisces. Okay, remember the Sun made a conjunction with Pisces at 21 degrees. So this is another degree away. It says, a prophet carrying tablets of a new law walking down the slopes of Mount Sinai. The need to bring down to the level of everyday existence the clear realizations made manifest by a great peak experience. The symbol obviously refers to Moses as he received from God, the God of his people, the basic principles upon which a new religion and even more a new ritual of living should be founded. This basic law has to be brought down. It represents a descent of formative and structuring power, a divine revelation. This type of revealed knowledge contrasts with the kind of knowledge born out of experience, of touch, of feeling, of warmth, of contact. The second stage symbol picture as a process to which a religious God-given character has been attributed in the past, by which today is being investigated at the personal and psychological level. The important point here is what you do after you have a peak experience and an inner revelation. How many of us have had that? How many of us have had a revelation? And how do we put that into practice? The key word here is mandate, but the basic problem is how to fulfill it in the right spirit. So we know what we have to do. How are we going to do it? On the 30th, we have Mercury making a waxing sextile to Saturn. This is opening the lines of communication, opening the lines of communication. On Wednesday, the 31st, Venus makes a sextile to the North Node. This is opportunistic. Venus is the North Node being in Gemini, Venus being in Aries, an opportunity to bring some new ideas, new values, new into the conversation that we're all having. And then we have the Sun making a waxing sextile to Saturn. And this is also opening the lines of communication, illumination. What kind of structures do we need to create in order to move forward? Okay, so we're going to escape that. All right, guys. So that's what I want to say about the astrology of, well, we don't need to look at that. The astrology of March. It's a very exciting time. The beginning when the Sun is in Pisces is a reflective time. It's a time of letting go. It's a time of forgiveness. Once we have the Sun move into Aries, then we're starting. So there's endings and beginnings that are happening this month. And remember that it's a highly creative month, that 3 energy and that 8 energy, the third eye activated, the throat activated, what you see, what you speak becomes manifest. Utilizing the energy of the past, of our past lives, of our knowledge, of that small, still voice within. What is it saying inside of us? Let's listen to that voice. Not the voice of the ego, but the voice of the soul, the voice of the higher self, the voice of our higher spiritual selves. And in order to do that, you're going to have to isolate a little bit. You're going to have to meditate. You're going to have to find the time to be with yourself and listen. I hope you enjoyed that. Hold on one second. I'm going to stop the share. Stop the share. All right, guys. I hope you find this illuminating and helpful. Have yourself a beautiful month. If you enjoy this, please like the video. If you would like a reading with me, you can contact me. I'll put links below. And I think it's going to be a good month. I think The hardest part of 2021, now not to say that we're out of the woods, because there's plenty of stuff to deal with, but the hardest part of 2021 is behind us. What we do with the future is up to us, and it depends on what we focus on, where we put our attention, and the kinds of things we say, the kinds of things we think, the need to be mindful, and the need to be loving. Much love to you. I love you guys. Thank you for all your comments, all your donations, all the clients I've gotten through this experience, all the friends I have made, all the beautiful things that you've sent me, all the gifts. It's all so appreciated from the bottom of my heart to your heart. Much love. Namaste. Have a great March.